Lady Yae has been a character many have been looking forward to since the start of the 2.0 update, and with good reason. This sly trickster has a way of leaving quite the impression. So let's talk about the lady who has charmed us with her wiles. Yae is a 5-star Catalyst user who wields the Electro Element. Like many other Catalyst users, Yae's basic attack have rather ambiguous range. Most of the time its default is within melee range, but depending on the shape of the battlefield it can extend beyond to reach the enemy closest to her. In a way, this ambiguity is very fitting to her personality. Yae's charged attacks, however, are far more clear. Her Kitsune Spirit attack sends a pulse of electro energy forward that hits multiple enemies in front of her. Against larger enemies, they tend to take damage twice, which is a property I believe is unique to Yae herself. For those of you who want to get the most out of Yae's charged attacks, it can be animation cancelled by jumping right as the Kitsune Spirit begins to loop around her right side. Yae's elemental skill summons a Yakan Kitsune totem called the Sessho Sakura. This can be done up to a maximum of 3 times, and they can all be summoned within quick succession of each other. These totems randomly target and damage one enemy within its radius, and it has quite the range. When summoning a Sessho Sakura, Yae defaults to moving backwards, but the direction she moves can be influenced by holding the direction of your preference. The power of these totems tends to improve the more of them you have on the field close to one another. You'll know that your totems are buffing each other's power when you see a line connecting them together. Yae's Sessho Sakura stays on the field for 14 seconds, and the cooldown of each skill charge is 4, allowing Yae to enjoy 100% uptime on a full reset of her skill. Moving on to Yae's burst, she destroys all active towers and sends down a punishing bolt of lightning upon her enemies. And don't worry too much about your totems being destroyed. Thanks to her first passive, for each totem destroyed in this way, Yae will deal an extra bolt of damage and recharge 1 use of her skill. This means it's possible to have a total skill reset when all 3 are present at the time of activation. The most interesting thing to know about Yae is the oddity that is her second passive. It transforms 15% of her elemental mastery into a percentile point boost that increases the damage output of her totems. Now, before you go crazy and start building Yae for elemental mastery, I would point towards the fact that her ascension stat is in fact crit rate and not mastery. Now, I can't speak on behalf of the developers, nor do I know what was running through their minds with the intent of this design, but my interpretation is that they noticed that players are taking advantage of characters that gift mastery to other members of the team with their skills. So if you want my personal opinion, I think this is clever character design that rewards players who are already using these types of characters to give mastery to their crit build characters to amplify their damage. For all intents and purposes, I believe that Yae is intended to be built as your traditional damage build. Her passive is simply icing on the cake. It's a rewarding treat, but it is not the foundation of damage. So with that in mind, perhaps we can talk about weapons and builds. So right away, the trial run seems to suggest that Yae doesn't have a particular build that is tailored for her specific playstyle. So in terms of builds, we have a few options. You can of course copy their build of 2-piece Thundering Fury and attach your 2 pieces of choice that grant 18% attack. But there are a few more options available. But first we should probably analyze the trial set. The 4-piece Thundering Fury on Yae wouldn't be adding much value to her playstyle. Adding electro reaction damage is nice, but if she's not built for high EM, this bonus is lost on her. In addition to this, her skill cooldown is already very low. Unless you're in the weapon domain in Mondstadt, you already have 100% uptime with her skill, and this benefit is highly unnecessary. That said, if you wanted to, you can always meme it up with her totems and build Yae as a full EM off-fielder who deals reaction damage in response to your on-field DPS. For a lower adventurer rank, the equivalent to the trial set is the 2-piece Gambler and the 2-piece Sojourner. Now, if you look at Yae's burst, you might be tempted to build into that, and that is a fair option. The burst scaling is insanely high, and if you want to turn Yae into a burst nuke, the 4-piece Severed Fate set has you covered. It synergizes well with her energy recharge needs, and turns the demand to fuel her burst into bonus damage that intensifies her burst strikes. Weapons that amplify this build will typically have energy recharge as a substat, and you'll want to run energy recharge as a substat on a lot of your set pieces as well to get the most out of her burst. Players of lower adventure rank won't have access to the damage buff, but for easier access to her burst, you can combine 2-piece Exile with 2-piece Scholar to hold you over. Moving on, you may think that slow and steady is how you win the race. After all, more often than not, Most of Yae's damage over time is going to be from her Sessho Sakura. You have a couple options for a build that focuses on this aspect. With support, you can opt for the 4-piece Tenacity set. I think there might be other characters more suited for this, but it is an option and I'm all about promoting a variety of playstyles. If it vibes with you, it is a set that can work. If you're going for damage, you can try copying her test trial build if that satisfies you. Otherwise, there is one last build I'd like to throw your way.
Thunder Soother!
Yeah, that's right, I said Thunder Soother. You see, Thunder Soother gives a grand total of 35% damage bonus when attacking enemies affected by Electro. This works great in teams that are mono Electro, but it also works really well in a specific reaction team. Of course, I'm talking about Electrocharged. Electrocharged works differently than most other reactions in that both elemental auras can exist simultaneously. This means you can constantly keep inflicting Electrocharged by attacking with either of the two elements. So, if you care about reaction damage, but you don't want reaction damage that messes up her damage bonus, take this into consideration. I promise Thunder Soother is not as terrible as people make it out to be. It is niche, but it is not bad. Plus, it's the perfect excuse to start building Sigcho or some other off-field Hydro applicant, so you can have more stage time with Yae and look at her beautiful attack animations. If you were looking for a video finding ways to do just that, there you go. The last thing I want to cover is the subject of weapons. There are many out there, and a lot of them are decent, so for the sake of all our sanity, I will give a brief rundown of some noteworthy entries. For lower AR interested in a burst build, Otherworldly Story has a nice energy recharge and allows Yae self-sustain potential because picking up energy will heal her. Magic Guide is also good for reaction damage and helps deal extra damage in Electrocharge teams. Solar Pearl is an interesting choice because not many Catalyst users can perfectly take advantage of its passive. Most want to use charge attacks and their basics aren't good enough to keep up damage before their skill is ready again. Yae's skill dealing consistent strings of damage almost makes her the exception in this case. The new Catalyst, Oathsworn Eye, is actually a surprisingly solid choice for a Severed Fates build. It's clearly designed after Kokomi's aesthetic, but the substat builds her attack, and that passive almost keeps up rather well with Yae's skill uptime. So all in all, this is a decent free-to-play choice. So if you're able to do the new event that's out right now, do it. Hakushin Ring is a craftable, and a lot of people like to hate on it. At full refinement, it gives 20% damage bonus to the element involved in its elemental reaction caused by its on-field wielder. I'd say its uses are for Electrocharge teams, with Yae either using Severed Fates or Thunder Soother, leaning more towards Thunder Soother with off-field Hydro applicants. Kagura's Verity is the new 5-star weapon designed with Yae in mind. Up to a max of 3 stacks, skill usage grants more skill damage, and with max stacks, elemental damage in general becomes buffed. This weapon is great for the Totem long game build, and the buff lasts longer than her skill uptime, which means Yae can almost immediately gain and maintain access to the full benefits of this weapon. Side note, if you're a Lisa main and you want to see some scary damage potential, this weapon is also for you. The last weapon I want to talk about is probably one of Yae's best options, the Widzith. Yes, the Widzith is the go-to weapon of choice for almost all Catalyst users, but with Yae in particular, you just cannot lose. Attack buff? She'll take it. Damage bonus? Of course she'll take it. Elemental mastery? Did I hear totem defense game? Seriously, she cannot lose regardless of which buff she receives. She can utilize them all, and it's all thanks to her second Ascension passive. This weapon, which is typically seen as a good 2 out of 3 buff booster for most, gets far more use from this lady than many others. So if you've got a copy of this weapon lying around and you aren't married to any of the other weapon choices, use it. It's good. So that's about enough of me talking now. Maybe you'll have found some use out of this video. If you have, let me know. Leave a comment with your own ideas of how you plan to run Yae. I love seeing all sorts of playstyles, so go nuts. At any rate, that will do it for me. I hope you have enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you next time. So until then, stay tuned.